High-altitude environments are some of the most harsh conditions for humans to live in. The thinning of the air as you increase in elevation becomes a prevalent issue for most to handle due to the lack of oxygen you receive with every inhale. With this thin air, most humans, mainly mountain climbers, will suffer major symptoms corresponding to the conditions they're out under. Headaches, rapid heart rate, and nausea are some of the symptoms that stem from hypoxia, which occurs when there is an absence of oxygen in the body's tissues. So knowing this, how have populations survived and thrived in areas with these harsh conditions across the world? For the average person, when reaching higher elevations, the body will produce more red blood cells in the body, which actually goes against the body's need for more oxygen, as too many red blood cells can increase the viscosity in the blood and can raise the heart rate and increase risk of heart attack and stroke. But the populations of the Tibetan Plateau, Andes Mountains, and the Ethiopian Plateau have different adaptations to help accommodate the extreme climate. Tibetans have mutation in their genes associated with higher body fat, helps store energy since the climate can be harsh. These mutations are inherited by offspring even at lower elevations. Along with that, Tibetans accumulated the mutation to boost production of the cell-signaling molecule nitric oxide, which aids in vasodilation with blood flow to the muscle tissues. Living at these high altitudes puts normal populations at risk for many illnesses, such as chronic mountain sickness. However, population groups living in high altitudes such as the Andean highlanders in the Americas, Tibet in Asia, and Ethiopia in Africa have done so without complication. This adaptation is recognized as an example of natural selection. Natural selection stems from the adaptation in humans to the environment, and in doing so, allows for these people to thrive in their elevated climates.
High-altitude adaptation in humans can be seen in Tibet in Asia, Ethiopia in Africa, and Andes in the Americas. They have all undergone physiological and genetic changes to adapt to their environment, which can be observed from molecular evolution, which is a process of evolution and its observation through DNA, RNA, genes, and gene products. The strongest signal of natural selection in Tibetans was found through a transcription factor called E+1, which keeps the blood from getting too thick. Moreover, Tibetan mastiffs have been also found to have the same gene. The molecular evolution of Tibetans can be seen as the fastest genetic change observed in any human gene to date. However, the Andean pattern of genetic adaptation is largely distinct from Tibetans. Still, they both show positive natural selection under the same selective pressure. For Andeans, there is no significant association between E+1 and hemoglobin concentration. Among some groups in this region, there is a significant variation in NOS3, the gene encoding for endothelial nitric oxide synthase, which is associated with higher levels of nitric oxide in high altitudes. Thus, some highlanders among the Andeans are better adapted than others. Highland Ethiopians do not exhibit Andeans' increase in oxygen content of hemoglobin, as well as any significant change in blood circulation of the brain. The hemoglobin concentration is lower than normal, similar to the Tibetans. Even though they have all independently evolved to their own environment, all three groups are immune to the extreme condition in the high-altitude environment.
This chart shows a snapshot of the different traits in each of the three populations. They all have undergone physiological and genetic changes to adapt to their environments. The arrows pointing up, meaning an increase, the arrows pointing down, meaning a decrease, and the arrows side to side, meaning to remain the same in comparison to humans living at typically more hospitable altitudes. We can clearly see there is quite a collection of unique and analogous adaptive traits, all with the purpose to assist these populations to live at high altitudes. This reflects convergent evolution. Convergent evolution occurs when species occupy similar ecological niches and adapt analogously under similar selective pressures, which is exactly what has happened here. Even though these populations all evolved independently of one another in their own environments, all three have developed ways to not just survive but thrive at their extremely harsh, high altitudes.
Because the Tibetans, Andeans, and Ethiopians have lived at high altitudes, it has led them to have specialized cultures and an adapted biology. Their hemoglobin concentrations, plasma volumes, and chest sizes can be comparable. However, these traits may also be the result of other non-mutually exclusive factors, such as cold temperatures at altitudes, high altitude exposure during growth, and genetic drift, which is the change in the frequency of an existing allele in a population due to random chance, which can be especially prominent in smaller populations like these.